All right, so welcome to Path Report. We've got another episode here, and this is your opportunity, the viewer, to learn about pathology, how pathologists connect with patients, where the pathologist serves in the care team, and we hope that by watching these videos, you'll come away with a greater understanding of pathology, of disease, and questions you might want to ask your doctor about your pathologist whom you may have not yet met but may want to meet. And we think a great way to introduce patients to pathologists is to talk about precision medicine. And what exactly is precision medicine? We've got a graphic here that we'll put up, and precision medicine is essentially tailoring a patient's treatment to their particular disease, their particular pathology that's going on that may be unique from that places them different from another patient. And the paradigm for precision medicine is cancer. And we've learned a lot about cancer in the years, but we still have much to learn. But what we have learned is that many cancers have a weakness, an Achilles heel. And it's this precision medicine that the pathologist is the purveyor of, where we look for that weakness, we try to find that weakness, and we try to direct the care team to treat the patient's cancer, particularly targeting that weakness. And I want to introduce Linnea Olson here, who I met a couple years ago through Twitter and social media, where she has an extremely interesting story to tell, and I'd like to start off by asking her about her story. We can go through her story, how we connected, and some lessons for viewers at home that they may want to take back and bring to their doctor and ask, can they see their pathology report? Can they meet their pathologist? Will precision medicine help them? So thank you, Linnea, and appreciate you taking some time out of your day today to talk with us. So tell us about what went on, what's been going on, how we met, and your disease.
That's a lot all at once. So I was diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer in April of 2005. I was 45 years old. I'd never smoked. I'd been misdiagnosed with adult onset asthma for 2 years prior. So my diagnosis came as a total surprise. I knew nothing about cancer in general, and particularly lung cancer, something that I never thought I'd have to worry about. I was diagnosed in a community hospital, but I switched my care to a large research hospital, and it turned out to be something that in the future would save my life, because right off the bat I was tested for EGFR, a newly identified driver of lung cancer, back in 2005. And although I was negative for that, it was an indication that my care from that point forward would be cutting edge.
And already at that time, we were just getting into precision medicine. I have a diagram here to illustrate to the viewers the different mutations that comprise non-small cell lung cancer. Your particular tumor, although you were initially tested for EGFR, which is a major component of lung cancers out there, it was not a driver for your particular cancer.
Yes, and at the time, my oncologist had been pretty certain that I might indeed test positive for it, just given the fact that I was a young woman and a non-smoker. And he had explained to me that if this were the case, I might be able to forego chemotherapy. But because I was negative for it, I did end up having traditional chemotherapy.
And I think that's an important message for the viewers here, is that lung cancer does not always equal smoking. There's a large and growing number of patients who develop lung cancer who've never smoked in their lives. And your particular demographic fit that profile.
Yes.
A young woman, non-smoker. Nowadays, we think about precision medicine. We think about, is there a mutation? Because no longer is smoking connected to lung cancer in the way that it was in the past. And that's something we'll talk about, I think, in the interview here, is about the stigma associated with lung cancer and your experience with that.
Yes.
So your test for EGFR, which is one of the major mutations of lung cancer, was negative. So what happened next?
Well, I should back up a little. One of the first things that had to be determined was whether I was a candidate for surgery. And I was. So I had a lower left lobectomy followed by 4 rounds of adjuvant chemo. And my hope was that I would actually be cured. But unfortunately, my first visit for a scan review post-chemo, I already had a new nodule in my lung.
And you must have suffered from a lot of the side effects of the conventional chemotherapy. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, it was hard. And, you know, it's the sort of thing where I try to tell patients it's doable, you know, but it was very, very hard. And particularly following on the heels of a surgery that was also very difficult. So each round of chemo became a little bit more difficult, and by the end I felt just incredibly physically diminished.
So at this point, you had been through conventional chemotherapy, but you had developed new tumors.
Yes.
And what did your care team do at that point?
Well, we were in a period that my oncologist referred to as watch and wait. And my education about lung cancer still had not advanced very much at this stage. And frankly, there was not a lot of information in the public sector back then anyway. But what I did not understand or appreciate, and perhaps it's just as well that I did not, is that there really weren't very many treatment options for me. And so this watch and wait was both a practical thing and something done out of necessity. And at a certain point in time, 2 years in, I asked my oncologist approximately how many nodules I had in my lung. He referred to these nodules as schmutz, and he said I had approximately 33. So I knew at that point in time that if indeed this was cancer, that it was not a good thing. I felt kind of like a bomb, a cancer bomb.
And at that point, there were some early trials going on, of which your oncologist thought you might be a candidate, or your tumor was studied further.
Yes, I was restaged in 2009, and at that point in time, for the very first time, I also said to my oncologist, how much time do you think I have left? And his response was 3 to 5 months. So I said, is it time to get my affairs in order? And he said, yes, I think it is. But we went ahead and tried Tarceva, even though I was EGFR negative. And I spoke to him just a few months ago about this, and his explanation for trying the Tarceva was that he was just hoping that perhaps the test had missed the fact that I was EGFR positive. So I started on that, went back for a scan review. I was feeling crummy. I'd gotten all the side effects of Tarceva, but none of the benefit. My scan showed further progression, but he explained that when I had the biopsy done for restaging, he had submitted it for further genetic testing, and this time he was looking for an Elk gene.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, your tumor was sequenced, or it was examined for this particular Elk mutation, which from that prior graph we saw is about 3 to 4% of lung cancers, and the news came back that you did harbor this mutation.
Right. So I'm in his office. I'm getting the bad news that the Tarceva is not working, but this potentially good news that I have an Elk mutation, and yet I still don't have a very good understanding of what this means. But he explained to me that the way he saw it, I had 4 options. I could do nothing, I could stay on Tarceva, I could return to traditional chemotherapy, or I could see if I could get a place, enroll in this phase 1 clinical trial for an experimental therapy that was targeting Elk mutations.
So at this point, you decided to enroll in this early phase 1 trial of a still experimental drug that is precision medicine, where it takes advantage of tumors that have this Elk mutation or translocation and targets it to shut down the tumor. And can you tell us about your initial experience with the new agent?
Well, I'll start by saying I was terrified, because a phase 1 trial, that meant more to me at that point in time than anything to do with Elk, although the word targeted sounded good. When I asked questions about anybody preceding me in the trial, there'd been only one other person at our hospital, and they had passed away in part because of side effects of the drug. So I was kind of between a rock and a hard place, but I knew that the other options were frankly non-options, and that this at least offered a sliver of hope. So as frightened as I was also very hopeful that at the very least it might extend my life for a few months, which frankly, back in 2008, that's what you hoped for from a phase 1 trial.
Right, and you were actually one of the first patients in the entire world to be in this study, so this is extremely brand new, groundbreaking advances, where it must have been extremely nervous not having any precedent.
Yes, and obviously not a choice I would have made if I felt like I had other options, but the bottom line was and is that I just wanted to live. I have 3 kids, and the youngest at that point had just turned 10, and it was just super important for me to do everything I possibly could to try to stay.
And how did you respond to this new Elk inhibitor?
Well, surprisingly, I responded positively almost immediately, like within days. I had been pretty sick when I started the trial, extreme shortness of breath, a lot of coughing, and both of those abated almost immediately. And I sent an email to my doctor. He answered in a very cautious way, although he told me that secretly inside, he was very hopeful and celebrating. When I went in for my first scan 7 weeks later, I walk in the office and he says, "This is the best news I've given anybody in months. It's flipping amazing." And he put my scans up side by side, and the one where I hadn't had therapy yet, it looks like there's a blizzard in my lungs. And the one that had just been taken, they're almost clear.
Right, and we've got an image of that CAT scan. And just as you described, the viewers can see in that CAT scan, the before image is on the left, the after image is on the right, and indeed there is a dramatic difference in that whiteout of your left lung is cleared up. It's dark on the after, which means the tumors had responded.
Yeah, it was incredibly exciting. A little bit, I don't know how to explain this. It was almost unnerving too, where I certainly wasn't expecting this, but unnerving in a very positive way, like a fairy tale feeling that, oh my goodness, maybe I am going to live.
Right. And at some point you continued taking the ALK inhibitor, which did go on to approval and is now FDA approved for treatment of tumors that have your type of mutation. And how was your experience taking the ALK in subsequent rounds?
Right. Well, I think it's important to clarify that because of timing, when I started this first clinical trial, there obviously were no other therapies that I had to look forward to. And my oncologist did explain to me that even though I'd had this fantastic response, it did not represent a cure, that at some point in time my cancer would become resistant. And it did. Fortunately, because of where I sat in this trial, I was able to stay on even past progression until a second ALK inhibitor went to clinical trial. And again, I became a very early participant for ceritinib.
Right. So you literally are still in the forefront of this battle against your tumor, and one of the weaknesses of precision medicine is that tumors do eventually become resistant, and it's a continuous cat and mouse game where we, as the doctors and scientists and clinicians and patients, have to stay one step ahead of the cancer.
Right.
And you've been having success on the second generation of this ALK inhibitor.
Yeah, and now I'm on my third phase 1 clinical trial for an ALK inhibitor. This time I've had my most sustained response, which was kind of unexpected, but I've now been on, it'll be in June, 4 years. My last scan did show what might be progression, but I've had an incredible run.
So as we mentioned, one of the weaknesses of precision medicine is the development of resistance. And the role of the pathologist here is important in coming into play again of retesting tumors at patients' different time points in their journey through cancer. Because cancers evolve, we have to get an accurate understanding of how they evolve so that we can develop these next generation inhibitors to stay ahead of the cancer. Now, at some point a couple years ago, we met. We met through social media, through Twitter, and we wrote a story together in Stat magazine about your journey. And I invited you to come out to the lab to see what lung cancer looks like, to hold a lung cancer, to look under the microscope at a lung cancer, because unfortunately you didn't get to see your own cancer, but I was able to show you a similar cancer. And can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, seeing a lung was incredibly emotional for me, but also strangely gratifying. I was trying to describe it to someone afterwards. They were wondering if this freaked me out in any way. I'm like, no, exactly the opposite, because I think there is this tendency to almost, what's the word, anthropomorphize? Right. Is that the right word? Yeah. And, people will refer to cancer as the beast, and you see it as something bigger and in a way scarier than it actually is. To hold a lung and this was a lung that had been resected from somebody that had a tumor, and to see the tumor, I mean, it sort of changed things for me. It put it in the proper perspective. It got me thinking about the fact that when I had my lung resected, that it was just whisked away, and of course I was under anesthesia, so it wouldn't have been the right time to show me, but it seems like there should be a way for patients to see images or slides or something of their own tissue.
And I think that's where the role of the pathologist is important. We as pathologists, and I hope many of the viewers who are pathologists will listen to your story, take it to heart, make the effort to reach out to their patients and patients alike who may watch this video, to ask their doctors, to ask their care team, can they see their pathology report? Explain their pathology report. Could they see their specimen or their slides? And pathologists, as a pathologist, I am delighted when patients reach out to me for that request. And I think it makes for better care. It makes for empowered patients who are going to be better advocates for their care and to help navigate their journey in a more meaningful way.
Right. And yet I think for most patients, we don't even think of it as an option. That the pathologist is somebody that we can reach out to. And when you and I first started talking, I did share with you that when I got my initial diagnosis, I sent a thank you note to the pathologist. And for me, I think that had something to do with being misdiagnosed for 2 years. And then here's the person who finally figured out why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And they did write me back and thank me for thanking them, but I never met them.
Right. So your pathologist played a big role in your journey, and is part of the reason why you're still alive and successfully battling your tumor. And your role, your interaction with pathology continues as we try and examine your tumor to make sure we stay ahead of it.
Yes, and for certain in my case, had I not found that I had an Elk mutation, that's the reason I'm still here right now. I should add that each time I've had progression and had to come off a trial, it's just the policy of my hospital to retest for acquired secondary mutations. And each time they've been able to identify something. And this is important because it means that I'm not going to try a therapy that has been shown in the lab to not be active against my particular acquired mutation. And so that means that, again, the precision part, my therapy has been that much more tailored with this foreknowledge.
Right. It's matched to your particular disease that we have a high confidence will be successful versus conventional chemotherapy that it's unknown whether it'll work or not.
Yeah.
So as a patient, what would you like to tell viewers about your journey, about your thoughts, about how other patients might learn something or be helped from your knowledge?
I think the most important message I can give people is that you really do have to be your own advocate. And you hear that a lot, but it's not always clear what that means. To me, what it means is to not be afraid to ask questions or to seek knowledge or to try to bring as many members of your team into contact with yourself as you possibly can, because hopefully this is going to be a long journey, and part of it is this relationship building, but also just learning more so that you can make educated decisions.
Fantastic. And as a pathologist, I think we can be instrumental and a partner with our patients and to be an active member of this care team. And I would like patients the public to reach out to us, to make sure they engage us in their care. And it's through episodes like this that we're hoping to raise the awareness about pathology and how you may benefit from knowing your pathologist. So I want to thank you greatly for taking time out to talk with us, to share your thoughts and your experiences, and hopefully help many others.
Good. Thank you. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart, very important to me.
Great.
Thank you.
And for more information, you can check out pathreport.org to see previous episodes and to look forward to future episodes where we'll learn about even more patient experiences. Thank you.